continuing education, and we've been teaching online and hybrid classes for a few years now. And while teaching online and teaching remotely, it's important that we don't view our online teaching with the same lens of how we normally teach our face-to-face classes. Teaching with an online video conferencing platform such as Zoom, Google Meet, or Skype, while great and while it allows us to more closely mirror what we do in the face-to-face classroom, we can't have this be our main mode of instruction in an online class, especially because many of our students will inevitably not be able to attend our online meetings due to work, family obligations, or their children's school. And we just simply can't have 3-hour Zoom meetings. It's not good for anyone involved. So we need to make sure that our coursework and assignments are also available outside of these Zoom meetings, and that we're providing opportunities for students to collaborate and participate if they can't attend these meetings as well. And you might have students right now that say, oh, teacher, I only want to attend the Zoom meetings. Or maybe they are just only attending the Zoom meetings, but not doing anything else. And I think this is because this is what students are used to. This is what they're familiar with. So we also need to help them transition from tradition, and we need to make sure that our outside assignments, outside of the online video meetings, is exciting, engaging, and simple enough for students to access and participate in, so that then they will hopefully want to participate in both parts of the class. And especially now in this chaotic time, it's important to remember to keep it simple. You have probably been bombarded recently over the last few weeks with emails and professional development, introducing new online tools and resources for you to use. And at this point, you are either suffering from option paralysis and you don't want to try anything new, or maybe you feel like you want to try everything new and see what sticks with your students. But just as in a face-to-face class, it's important right now to remember to keep it simple. And you don't want to pick a really cool tool and allow that to dictate what you are going to teach your students. Instead, just as always, we want to make sure we are starting with the learning outcome. We're thinking about what the learning outcome is, and then we need to decide what we will use and how we will help students achieve this learning outcome. So what is the simplest tool we can use, and what's the most equitable tool we can use to help our students achieve this learning outcome? So you'll first want to think about your learning outcome, determine which tool or website will help your students meet this learning outcome. And then I would recommend starting with your district or school's learning management system. This could be Canvas, Moodle, Google Classroom. But if you're using this, then your students are already familiar with it. So there's no need to take them to another tool, give them another account login. If your learning outcome can be achieved through the learning management system, then there's no need to go elsewhere. But if you're maybe not yet using a learning management system, or you're just looking for an alternative to spice things up, then when you're looking at another tool or resource, make sure that you're evaluating it for ease of student use. So test it out on your phone. Is it compatible? Is it free for you and students? If there are videos, do they have closed captions or an interactive transcript? So these are some of the things that need to be taken into consideration when deciding whether or not to bring in a new online tool into your class. So if we look at a learning outcome, for example, students will communicate effectively on a team to solve a problem and report information. You would normally see this and say, oh, I can definitely help my students achieve this in the face-to-face classroom, or even in a Zoom classroom, a Zoom meeting. This would definitely be something we could do with breakout groups, and it would not, it's not going to be anything too challenging. But we also want to look at other ways how students could achieve this outside of those Zoom meetings. And so we know we first want students to brainstorm, discuss, and report the information. And so now we know after they've completed these 3 things, they will have achieved this learning outcome. So we need to determine which tools will allow them to do each of these tasks. And so for brainstorming, a good tool that you could use for this would be a shared Google Doc. And you could create a shared Google Doc for each group. So each group would be able to click on a link and access this document and add their ideas and collaborate. And you could, as a teacher, you could add comments and provide feedback, or students could also learn how to add comments for their group mates. And so you, as the creator of this document, you would need a Google account to create this, but you would share it so that your students would not need an account. And in order to do that, when you share this, you would need to make sure that you select that anyone with the link has editing rights. And then you, after selecting these settings, you would then just copy this link and you could send it to your students in an email or on the learning management system. So students would just click on the link to be able to access the shared document. For a group discussion, you could use your learning management system discussion board. You could do this on Zoom, but an alternative would be Padlet. And Padlet is mobile friendly, as you can see here. You could, for this purpose, you could create a Padlet for each group. So each group would have their own Padlet and they could share their information. They could upload photos, videos, links, text to share with their group mates. With a free account, you can create 3 Padlets. So if you have the free account and you're limited with your Padlets, then you could create 1 Padlet for all groups. So all groups would access the same Padlet and they would just collaborate in 1 column on the Padlet. They would click this plus sign and then they could add whatever content they would like to share. And for Padlet, students don't need to create an account or log in. You just simply share a link with them. They click on the link and they will be taken to the online multimedia bulletin board. And for reporting information, Flipgrid is a free, fun, and fairly simple tool to use. And Flipgrid is mobile friendly. It has an Apple and Google app. And students, after adding the app, they can easily record a video and upload it from their phone. And they don't need an account or login to be able to add their video. They would just need a link that you would provide to them. And for this task, you would be able to create a Flipgrid for each group so that only those group members would add their videos to this Flipgrid. And then after you have all the different Flipgrids from each of your groups, then you could share all the Flipgrids with your entire class so they can see each group's report. Students upload videos with Flipgrid and then the teacher can provide feedback on each video that will be sent to the students via email. So these are some ways that you can encourage collaboration and teamwork apart from an online Zoom or Google Meet class session. And don't feel like you would need to use all of these tools at once or even use all of these to achieve this one learning outcome. Maybe you decide you would like to just explore one of these tools for this purpose, or maybe you decide that you want to spread this assignment out over the course of a few weeks and you spend 1 or 2 weeks with each of these tools with your students. So just remember to keep it simple for you as well as your students. Okay, thank you.
Hi. When I started to think about this process that we've been going through from triage to better practices in online learning, uh, it made me think that maybe we could look at this whole thing in some kind of a framework. And so I came up with I, what I think are three keys that we are taken into consideration. And one is that, as we said before, that to have equitable student access in the process of the online learning. The other is that the instructors need to have facility with the tools, and some of them are at different points than others, and we've been working hard to develop that. And then the third is that we need to really think about how our instructional design is working and whether it is really accomplishing what we really ultimately want to accomplish in whatever mode we're teaching in. So that's how I'm kind of looking at writing tasks for this presentation. And when I think about these keys, the idea for me is that we want them to coincide as much as possible. We want them to be congruent, and that to me is an indication that we're succeeding. So I wanted to just start off with like what is the kind of the worst case scenario, and it's happened to us, and I think it's happened to many people when a student has no access to or has very little ability to use a computer or a tablet. What do you do? Well, you can in fact just take pictures of text that students are writing. They can be The student can send those very easily by email or by text message, and that's a very common digital tool that everybody is using. In fact, it's pretty universal for people to use their phone to just take a picture of something just to remember it or to record it in some way. And also the cameras that phones have are pretty well integrated for sharing. It's very easy to share something. And they can be used for other tasks too, not just for writing. I have also found they're useful for solving technical problems. When students are having issues, they can take pictures of their screen and send those to show what's going wrong. It's also good for enrollment problems, and just in general for students to be able to capture instructional materials during video meetings is very, very useful. So I started to think, well, how does this work with the congruence of these keys? And so the student access is, of course, very high, and the instructor facility is already very high in most cases. The design is pretty good, considering it's not the most ideal. It's not there isn't the most flexibility with the materials, and it takes a lot more effort to exchange the information, but it's still very effective. What about a way when there are only cell phones available to do this with another tool, which is Google Forms? This is something that it's like a survey that has questions with fields that you can input information as answers, and it has the option to provide short answers or for paragraph length answers. So this is something that students can really take advantage of. It also can just function like a test or kind of simple exercise. So this is something that can be sent very easily just by creating a link, and it also integrates with other arenas like Canvas or with web pages. So in terms of the congruence of the keys then, for me, it seems like it's something that's very easily accessible to the students. It's very easy for instructors to use. And I would say that in terms of instructional design, I would say it's pretty good. Again, it's probably not the most ideal thing, but it's very effective. Next, I wanted to consider what we can call or consider digital annotation, because to contrast it with writing on something and taking a picture of it with a camera photo. This is something that is very flexible. It's very quick. You have the student's electronic version of the student's writing, and then you can make annotations that are indexed with parts of the student's writing. It does take a certain amount of technical coordination. Either that happens through the LMS like Canvas, or you can do it with Google Drive. And I have here an example of what it would look like. So here is the student's writing, which has been shared with the instructor, and you can see that in the right you have the margins where the teacher's comments are made, and then these are linked or indexed with the yellow highlighted part within the text. And you can also go and look at previous versions of the student's writing. So it's like going back in time, and you can see the writing process. So it's really very useful to get a good sense of the student's writing and to work with the student in an iterative way. Now, it is something that is very similar to how you would be just writing in traditional feedback, and it has the same advantages. But it also has additional advantages in that the student's work is always centrally stored in one place, and it's very accessible to all those people involved. In terms of the congruence of keys, I would say that the student access is variable and that it can be problematic. If it's in the LMS, then usually it's not. Google Drive requires a certain amount of student technical ability. Same thing with the instructor. There's a certain a steeper learning curve, I would think, but it's not really that much to do. So it's potentially very, very high congruence of keys. Now, the other way that you can give feedback is just verbally or orally in spoken feedback with a screencast, and that's something that students really, really respond to very well. It's very fast because you don't have to spend as much time writing things out, and it is integrated into an LMS like Canvas. So it might, if you're not using Canvas, then you're going to have to use the separate apps, but there's quite a few of them. There's Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic, and those integrate very well with YouTube. I would say that in terms of the congruence of the keys is that the student access is very, very high. Instructor facility is variable, but it's a somewhat steep learning curve, but not really too much. So it's potentially very, very high design value. The last thing I'd like to look at is actually combining these last two is a video meeting with student document sharing. So this is really the closest thing to actually meeting the student in person. And it really does allow for a truly dialogic process. And I have a recording of an example.
Well, I'm talking about here, though, before the managers. Because
okay, we need to put the managers first and mine next, I think.
Well, I think we need to put a connector here that says, like the ones we just looked at.
Okay. What I want to do is like this. Change it to so already signed. Okay. I want to take this one, and oops, what did I do? Yeah, I want to do this.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, I want to connect the two and bring mine later.
Good, okay.
Like what managers were challenges to go online instead of paper documents and pre-fill. Okay. Also, I was involved with. In addition, can I say in addition?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say that this is something that really is that although it does require a high degree of technical coordination because you're dealing with sharing a document with Google Drive and you're doing it on Zoom, but in terms of the congruence of keys, well, the student access, of course, is going to vary a lot, but if the students can learn these tools and if the instructors learn them, then I find it very, very, very high design value, and that it really, really has very good results with the students writing and with their progress as writers. So again, I think this is one way to think about it that has helped me to kind of look at what we've gone through in the past 6 or 7 weeks and what we want to be thinking about as we move forward to a summer term where we know we're going to be doing everything online. Thank you.
I got to tell you guys, I was a little bit nervous about pushing these videos out, but it seems to be working well. I just wanted to remind everyone, if you have questions for Erica, Jessica, and Monica, please use the Q&A window and go ahead and enter those. Let's continue with video number 3.
Hi everyone, I'd like to talk a little bit about using assessments in your remote learning classes or online classes. I know that many of us have been using Zoom a lot these last few weeks, and I find that this sort of synchronous mode of being able to see each other's faces and everything is wonderful for the students who are able to preserve that classroom community and connection and being able to see each other's faces. And I think it has proved to be of great benefit for many of our students, but I do worry that some of our students are being left behind. Many students are living in a situation where they have their children at home from school, and if they do have a computer at home, for many of them, their children are using the computer for their own education, or there isn't a computer at home. Also, there are some students who either have been laid off from their jobs or are essential workers. As we know, a lot of the essential workers are among the lower paid jobs, and a lot of our population of non-credit ESL fits in with that demographic. And they may be working different hours from usual, more hours than usual, and some of them may not be able to meet during these Zoom meetings synchronously with their instructors and classmates. So I'd like you to keep that in mind, and it'd be good for us to think more about balancing synchronous and asynchronous methods of instruction. And of course, assessment is very important in our instruction. So I'd like to talk about 3 different tools that I use and many faculty in our district have used successfully in distance education. Of course, one of them is Zoom. It is wonderful for synchronous interactions. And then we have Google Forms and Google Voice that we have used. Google Forms would be a form of asynchronous assessment, and then Google Voice could either be used synchronously or asynchronously. So starting with Zoom, I think that this is the one most people are most familiar with these days. But if you're going to give an oral assessment, this can be a really good tool for conversation or pronunciation classes. I've often used a spreadsheet or a doodle poll for students to sign up for assessment times. So a doodle poll is it's a website where people can schedule things and find out people's availability. But if that's a step too far for either the students, you don't want them to have to get used to yet another website, or as a teacher, you may not have the time to learn a new tool effectively immediately. So you could even just use a Google spreadsheet and just write down your available times and then make sure to make the spreadsheet editable by the students so that they can write their names in the slots when they're available, and that would be very easy for them to schedule their assessment times. I really like using the waiting room feature during these times. You can use the same Zoom link in this case with all of your students, but if you have 5 students in a row signed up for times one after each other, the students are not going to be interrupting anyone else's assessment time if you use the waiting room feature. So they'll just be in the waiting room until one student is done, then they'll leave the meeting, and then you can accept the next student into the call. So that's a really nice feature. And of course, it doesn't have to be one-on-one. It could also be, you could assess students in pairs or groups if you want them to do more interactive type tasks. So definitely Zoom is a good tool for us to use, but it is a synchronous tool in this case. I also have used a lot of Google Forms successfully. Google Forms has the advantage that you can use it with a learning management system. So you can embed a Google form into Canvas or Moodle or whatever other learning management system, or you could just give your students a link to it. But you don't have to have a learning management system in order to use it. So you can plug it in to whatever website or learning management system you have. So it also doesn't require students to have an email address. You can make that feature available so that you can reply to your students from the Google form, but it's not a requirement. One thing that's really nice is that they have a quiz feature. So you can use this feature to create multiple choice questions, true-false questions, short answer questions. You can have like a checklist style question where students will check all that apply. And then they can write, I don't know that I would necessarily assign an essay question via Google Forms, but you can have them do a short answer style quiz as well. It's not as rich in testing question types as a learning management system like Canvas or Blackboard or something like that would be, but it does have a number of different question types and it gets the job done. So for example, in my face-to-face class that has now been converted into a remote learning format, the students, many of them do not have email addresses, they do not have computers, and because of that, they don't have access to a learning management system to Canvas, which our district is using. So instead, I have been relying heavily on Google Forms to get feedback from the students and to do formative assessments. So that is a tool available to you, particularly if you do not have access to that learning management system. Also, of course, Google Voice. This is a tool that I have used a lot during my time teaching online, but also for my face-to-face class. I don't always want to give out my personal phone number to students, although I've never had anybody abuse it before. But it is really nice to have a number that's not associated with your personal cell phone. Students also don't need a login to use this software. The person who needs to sign up for it is the teacher. So the teacher will need to have a Google account, and then they can ask to be assigned a phone number to their Google Voice. Teachers can use this to text or call their students, and then students can also text or call their teacher when you give the number out. It can be synchronous. You can have a regular style phone call in real time, or you could be texting back and forth in real time, but it could also be asynchronous. The students can text you at 10 o'clock at night, and if you don't have Google Voice linked to your phone, then you won't be woken up in the middle of the night when they respond to a text you sent earlier in the day, for example. I've also had faculty tell me about situations where they have the students call in to leave a voicemail message as a response to a teacher prompt. So I've even had level 1 or literacy level teachers talk about how successfully the students are able to do this because they know how to make a phone call. They may not know how to use the record your voice feature on Canvas or Linked or any of these other more professional websites, but they know how to use their phone for to talk on the phone. So that is one thing you could be using as a tool. So I hope these tools help you. I hope this conference goes well for you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, guys. Hey, just real quick, a shout out. I'm in the chat room. Can you guys hear me right now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay.
How about me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
We hear you.
Great.
So I was monitoring both the chat and the questions that were coming in, and there did seem to be some discussion around breakout rooms.
Yes.
One of the questions was more or less, do you use breakout rooms? And if so, what are some of the ways in which you do use Zoom breakout rooms?
I can go ahead and start.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that was just a general question. Do you use breakout rooms? This particular person doesn't, but would like to try it. And they want to know if you have any success stories. What are some of the ways in which you use breakout room?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Monica, and I teach an intermediate high vessel class with San Diego Continuing Education. And in every Zoom meeting I have with my students, we do breakout rooms. And it's once you get the hang of it, it's very easy for the teacher to set them up. And it's very easy for the students to, all they have to do to join a breakout room is just click a blue button on a pop-up window. And we do all kinds of activities where students either are participating in discussion questions and talking with their classmates, they're doing problem-solving activities, they're working together and writing a dialogue. At first, when we started, we just did conversation activities. But once students got more comfortable, we began exploring screen sharing and helping students learn how to share their own screen with their classmates so that then they'd be able to collaborate on documents within Canvas and with other online tools and resources. And we also, in our ESL program, we do have beginning level teachers that are also have success stories with using breakout rooms with their beginning level students.
Thanks, Monica.
Just to
Eric,
add to that, we've been very lucky to that our instructional assistants are still busy and working with us, and a lot of our beginning level instructors work closely with an instructional aide, and they usually will have maybe 1 or 2 aides with them, and so the aides will be in the breakout rooms with the students just in case any questions arise, although we're very fortunate to have that support.
Thank you. Another question that came in, what tools do you recommend for students that aren't comfortable with technology? This person has students who don't even use email, and this semester he's been texting back and forth, but that really isn't very sustainable or collaborative or effective. So what ideas might you have?
I'm actually in that same situation. My face-to-face class is with older adult students. All of them are older Chinese adults, and none of them, I shouldn't say none, most of them don't have computers. Most of them don't have email addresses. So I have been sending texts every day. I made my own website that does not require a login, a Google site, but I agree it's not terribly sustainable, and in fact, our district is mandating that everybody should move towards those online best practices and, if possible, using the learning management system. So I'm kind of having to do it on the fly, introducing very, very gradually, hey, I'll try to walk you through getting an email address just to get them into Canvas so that they have the opportunity to take more classes in the summer. But it is a challenge.
And one tool, one tool that I would also recommend, Jessica also just recently presented on this, would be ReadWorks. And this is a great program that is free, and students don't need an email address to sign up for ReadWorks. So it's readworks.org, and you can find reading passages for your students with audio and questions, comprehension questions, vocabulary activities. So that's a great option for the students as well.
Thank you. Hey, Eric, I think this one came in for you. Question is in regards to conferences with an individual student. When you have 100+ students per semester, how realistic would it be to Zoom and document share simultaneously with students one-on-one? How often in the semester would you attempt that, or did you attempt that? And is that an example of feedback on a particular assignment for all of the students, or was it specific help, during office hours for just a few students?
Yeah, well, obviously it's not realistic if there are 100 students. Usually, we don't have 100 students in one class, or it could be across classes, I suppose. But the way I approach it is that I use the Google Doc feedback, and that for most students that's enough. But sometimes there are students who just come to me and they say, and this is like an office hour type situation, and they say, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure what to do, and it's in cases like that where just writing in the margins is not enough, and so they will come to me, and so it's definitely, and it's usually just for one, for the major writing project, for the kind of the capstone writing project at some point when, to get the draft in. So this is something you have to do very strategically and judiciously, I should say.
Okay. This is an interesting question. Now we're at the end of this term, spring term, and this question is in regards to engaging activities when we're teaching synchronously. Have you guys, and looking back, what were the games or the activities that really promoted a high engagement level? Have you guys found any ways to play games or do other higher engagement activities synchronously? This person's delivering their content well and have multiple modes of engagement, but sometimes feels like it's really just not as engaging as an in-person class. So what are some of the ways that you tackled that and really invested the online class with some energy?
I've found that really, at least at this time, what students really just want to be able to do is interact with each other, most of all. And so I tried, what I'm finding most effective and what most gets the students involved is having some type of conversational prompts where they can really take the time to, exchange have meaningful conversation. I've done some game type things too, but I think what they really want is something really meaningful, really meaningful engagement with each other, and doing that in English. At least that's what's happening right now. And I think that was happening even before, when I was doing a purely online class that was all online.
Yeah, I completely agree with Eric. All my students want to do is just interact with each other when we're on a Zoom meeting. But, and I do think, some of the games such as Kahoot or quizzes, those are you could use those in a Zoom session, but you do have to keep in mind that if you want your students to participate, they would need 2 devices. So that, that could be a barrier. But you could do a whole group game where you display the Kahoot game on your Zoom screen and then all your students just participate as a whole group. That would be an option.
Wonderful. All right, so here we go. What are your top 5 applications and why?
Google Voice and Remind are definitely like the only way that I can get back with some students is through texting. So those would be big for me.
I would have to say, Google Drive, and in lieu of Remind, we have something that's integrated with Canvas called Pronto, which does what Remind does, and it does more. I'm also using Edpuzzle a lot, so that when students watch videos asynchronously, that they really have to watch them, and it makes the video watching a lot more, I think, productive. What else? I mean, I like Padlet a lot for brainstorming. I don't know if I could say those are absolutely the top 5, but they're definitely things that I'm using a lot. And plus Quizlet too, quizzes also.
Yeah, I like Quizlet. I like quizzes. My favorite thing right now, because it's just so convenient for me and for my students, is using the external tool URL in Canvas, the Google Cloud assignment. So if you are comfortable with Google Docs, then I would definitely recommend when you create an assignment in Canvas, you can select the external tool URL option and select Google Cloud assignment. And then you'll be able to have your students type on a Google Doc. You can create a template, and then they would each have their own version saved within Canvas without having to share a drive with you or share their doc with you. So that's definitely my favorite right now.
Yeah, I use that a lot.
Thanks, guys. This is an interesting question. It's really specific to Google Voice. When using Google Voice, do you use your computer or laptop to monitor students' texts and voicemail, or do you use your phone?
Both. Depends on where I am.
Yeah. Both.
It's a lot faster.
I like
faster
the computer because I can type faster and then copy paste.
Yeah.
Okay. And another question just came in. Any ideas for formal or informal online assessment tasks?
I've been thinking about that now that we're in this position where students, how would I approach something that otherwise I would have been doing in class in terms of in-class writing? And I was wondering, what if I just gave an in-class writing in order to, as a form of assessment, a timed writing? What if I did that during a Zoom session? And you might think that, well, that contradicts everything you guys just said. Maybe not, because in a way, one thing our students really need, at least students that are considering transitioning to college, is to have that experience of doing a timed writing. And if we just put it on Canvas, you could have a timer on it with Canvas, but it's not really the same thing as having a single time where everyone does it at the same time. That kind of replicates that classroom experience. So I've been considering that. I haven't tried it because Zoom time is really precious. I mean, that time can be very productive in so many other ways that I'm kind of debating myself about that.
Okay. Here's a good question for you guys. To comply with CEA accreditation, I need an assessment solution that protects the assessment itself and identifies the student who is completing the exam. What is the most efficient and secure assessment or proctoring capable technology available nowadays for online remote environment that you guys are using or maybe have heard of or know about or use?
Jessica? Monica? I don't know.
Yeah,
I would like.
yeah, because
I
right
think
now
our
we have
accreditation is a little
Canvas.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead, Jessica, if you were.
I think Jessica's.
Sorry, I think I'm lagging behind a little bit.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We've got a couple questions maybe we can fit in these last 3 minutes. Can you give an example of the type of prompt that a teacher would leave for a student with Google Voice? And how would you assess it?
Well, I haven't tried that, but I might do something like a telephone call that would be like a phone message in which the student that requires the student to respond in some kind of writing in a formal way, like with an email. But I've never tried that, but I would try something like that. Monica?
Well, I'm just thinking, Jessica, you might want to stop sharing your video.
Yeah, Jessica, your video is slowing you down.
Yeah. So I would maybe stop sharing that, and then we might be able to hear you better.
Okay.
Okay, because I feel like Jessica, yeah, go ahead, because I feel like you have an answer for this one.
I'm so sorry. I think I'm a little bit delayed in my audio right now.
Now it's much better.
Hopefully you guys can hear me. Yeah, so I've used Google Voice a lot, mostly for texting my students and having them text me, because that's generally the way that I get the best responses from students. But I have had like level 1 teachers and literacy level teachers demonstrate how they use it. And a lot of people just have their students call in, and maybe they're practicing just greetings. And so they just call in and they say, "Hi, teacher, how are you? This is what I did on the weekend. Looking for, I'm happy to see you in the Zoom call next," or whatever. Even just very, very basic, whatever you're studying, have them leave a short message about it. And then you can even play the recordings, the voice messages, in your Zoom chat. And go through them together, and the students appreciate hearing each other, and it brings more of a sense of a community in. But it really just depends on whatever you're teaching and whatever your goals are at that time. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a very a summative assessment at the end of a semester. It could just be a comprehension check, or, "Hey, I hope you're still listening to my class."
Thank you guys so much for sharing with us. And that brings us to the top of the hour. We're going to take a 10-minute break now and then continue with Stephen Krashen, 3 short talks. So we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Thank you again, Eric, Jessica, and Monica, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.